Buy the latest song by Timcast, Coming Home. Go to getcominghome.com, buy the song on iTunes, and with your support, we will smash those Billboard charts. We got the story from Daily Mail. Israel goes in. IDF confirms boots on the ground in southern Lebanon as bombs rain down from the sky after a day of ratcheting tensions. Yo, this is absolutely insane what is happening now. I almost didn't believe it, but of course I can believe it. The Israeli military last night confirmed it had launched a ground invasion of Lebanon as fears mount that the escalation could plunge the Middle East into an all-out war. After a day of ratcheting tensions in the war-torn region, the Israel Defense Forces announced that it had begun localized and targeted raids against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. These targets are located in villages close to the border and pose an immediate threat to Israeli communities in northern Israel. So I'm just going to say this, because I don't know how much more there is to add with the ongoing tensions and escalation of war in the Middle East. But I think this is why Kamala Harris did not choose Josh Shapiro. It's not just that he was Jewish and they were concerned because there are elements of the left that are deeply anti-Semitic and there are elements of the left that are deeply anti-Israel. And Josh Shapiro had spoken positively about Israel. But you combine that with the Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration knew that Israel was going to be ramping up this conflict. I do not believe for a second, considering it's only been a couple months, that Israel did not, and the U.S. did not have intelligence on the plans. The cell phone attack and the walkie-talkie attack was 15 years in the making. U.S. had to have known about that. U.S. had to have known about Israel's plans, or at least the possibility. And I imagine Kamala then said, choosing Josh Shapiro is a liability because the progressive left hates Israel, and many of them are anti-Semitic. But you add in the fact they're going to be moving in on Lebanon, that war is escalating. When this stuff goes down, the only thing that you will hear in the press is questions of Josh Shapiro over his stated support of Israel in the past, and they would make it a campaign issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just me saying this is going to sound anti-Semitic, but aren't we getting a little tired of how we're about to go into World War III because of Israel? I mean, is that bad for me to say that, Tim? That's a little frustrating that we're going to have to go probably fight a war with Iran. I support Israel. I don't like Hamas. I'm just saying it's inevitable.
But I think you look at the history of Israel and the United States, and I don't see a difference. So,
well, AIPAC controls every election. I don't like that.
I completely disagree. I think AIPAC is. So? I think AIPAC is deeply influential and controls a lot through their money. It wasn't. I don't think it was. Was it AIPAC who funded the opposition to Bowman and Bush?
Yeah,
it was AIPAC.
Yes, it was. Yeah, and they didn't get Ilan Omar out. But you know the conspiracy that JFK wanted AIPAC to register as a foreign agent, and then conveniently.
Well, I know that.
You've seen that.
But then you say conveniently is connecting a dot that we don't necessarily know we can connect.
That's true.
My point is this: people are only going to vote for a candidate that they want to support. And I was having a conversation when there were two rallies over the weekend, Rescue the Republic and Rage Against the War Machine. And we were talking to a couple people, and I said, the only reason AIPAC is influential is because most Americans want to support Israel and like what Israel is doing. So AIPAC can target that, run ads, and they get the support. When we have Riley Moore on this show, and he outright says he supports Israel and thinks we should be defending them, I'm like, he's a Freedom Caucus guy, but he really does support and agree with funding and helping Israel. Many members of Congress are not lying to you and are not being tricked into supporting Israel. People in this country do.
You don't have to be tricked if they're paying you lots of money, Tim. I mean,
I think that's
I served and I've trained with those guys for 2 weeks over in Israel, and out of all I have the French, we have. I don't recall them all, but we trained with them, and they were the most. I went to Haifa, Israel. They're the most like America. The people were like the coolest people that I've ever met in all the branches. So, from my experience serving and training with them. Oh, I
was swatting a bug.
Okay.
What did you think? I was like, get out of here, Raymond. Go away.
But yeah, that's so genuine. I am nowadays. This kind of stuff's going differently, but genuinely before all this mayhem in World War III, possibly, I supported them the most.
Dude, we've basically, Israel is our project, right? With all the funding we've given.
You could say that we're Israel's project.
Yeah, 75 years ago, when we start funding literally everything, when we're sending them all the resources, when we control basically whether or not they're gonna have military defenses. It's insane to me how people are like, but Israel controls us, and I'm like, dude. Israel has its interests for sure, but I really do think it's simple math. The size of the U.S. is the amount of external influence it has, and the size of Israel is the amount of influence that it has. So it certainly does influence back in a lot of ways, like we saw with the elections of Cory Bush and Jamal Bowman. Definitely has an impact. But the reality is, if you go out and poll the average person, they're going to be defending Israel.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not anti-Israel whatsoever, but I do think this is also weird, is that during this battle, versus occupied versus unoccupied, or however you want to call it, the Gaza Strip melee, that they paused the war temporarily to give them vaccines. Did you see that, Tim?
Mm-hmm. When?
Wait, what?
Recently,
A couple weeks
yes.
ago, yeah.
They stopped. They did a ceasefire.
stopped?
Israel did a ceasefire to give
To
Palestinians
allow health workers to go in and give, because it was smallpox, right? Smallpox.
either smallpox or like
That
polio.
makes perfect sense.
polio.
I know, but don't you think that's a little weird? Like, you want to kill somebody, but then you also want to vaccinate them?
Because you don't want the diseases spreading into your neighboring country where you've got secret tunnels underneath where people are running in and could be poisoning groundwater.
And it's worse PR than bombing people, I feel like.
Well, what was it?
Yeah, that's true, too.
What was what's that? Jose Andres, his World Central Kitchen. They blew up that thing.
That's crazy.
That was pretty bad.
Well,
Like, they were just trying to
look,
give people food.
Sure. And if the argument is Israel is a bit reckless and there's massive collateral damage,
I think that's
and
fair.
and reckless maybe understatement, maybe callous. I got no problem. Criticize Israel for all this stuff. Yeah. It's just crazy to me that we've been the principal funders of Israel. Largely for we're going on 75 years. When did we start funding this? And then people are like, yeah, the U.S. may have funded everything they're doing, but they control us the whole time. And I'm like, no, we have been trying to overthrow Iran forever. We have been meddling in Iran forever. We have been invading Iraq, none of these things are directly related to us being controlled by Israel, whatever. It's U.S. interests. We went to Libya because Gaddafi was interfering with the petrodollar. Saddam Hussein was interfering with the petrodollar. Israel basically is a vassal state that does what we want, but they also exert in-kind influence back upon us. I think that's true, but I think this is U.S. interests largely.
Well, it's funny you bring up Libya because Muammar Gaddafi was actually, he was beloved by his people supposedly, and that he actually had a dam that gave water to like hospitals to inner Africa, and they blew those dams up, so like they couldn't get clean water. And then now, the only place right now where you can buy a slave is in Libya. They have slave auctions.
Not the only place.
Well, okay, maybe there's Uyghur slaves in China, I guess. But
Alex, I got bad news for you.
Well, I went to Libya. I bought one.
There
I
are
had to return it,
child
though.
slaves being transferred across the
Oh, I know. And that's what they say. Oh, we need clean energy, yet you have to use children to mine the batteries or the cobalt.
Yes, but there are horrifying crimes happening on our southern border with child being brought in as slaves into this country. Like, slavery exists. It's a horrifying thing. But you are correct. Libya basically collapsed, turned into this disgusting slave trade, reignited the North African slave trade, and it was because Gaddafi was largely interfering with Western plans and on the petrodollar.
He wanted to back it by the African dinar or whatever their
gold
currency.
dinars.
Yeah.
He wanted a union. He wanted to create a powerful bloc, and they were like, take him out.
To make his country stronger. So he was being Libya first, and Hillary Clinton in America didn't.
And Hillary Clinton said, we came, we saw he died, and she laughed. And she laughed about it. These people are nuts. But like, my point is this. You look at that, and you look at what we know she's capable of. You look at the debates in 2015 and 16 with Donald Trump when on the debate stage, Hillary was like, yeah, we should have a no-fly zone over Syria. And they're like, your generals have warned you that would be a declaration of war on Russia. And she's like, I don't care. Like, I'm paraphrasing, but she was like, we have to do it.
Yeah.
You cannot put a no-fly zone over Syria. The Russians have a naval base in Tartus. That would be directly telling Russia war. You cannot operate your military operation. We are asserting our authority over your military operation. I look at all that. And then, like, what Israel is fighting with Lebanon and Iran, and there's some Jordanian conflict and things like this. And I'm like, well, that's regional. But the U.S. is principally, in my opinion, funding and driving all of the chaos across the Middle East. And then, of course, Israel has an inverse influence on us for their benefit, but it still does align with what many Americans want and they support and defend.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason it's possible. If the American people genuinely were like, we don't like Israel, AIPAC would have limited influence, if any at all.
True.
It's that you go to members of Congress, like even Lauren Boebert, and they're going to just go off on how much they love Israel. And you know what a big component of it is religious. A lot of Christian evangelicals are like, that is the Holy Land, and we have allies there, and we will defend it. And then you look at the secular progressive left, and they don't like it. And
No, they really don't. I think that it will be the difference in this election, I think.
And I don't want to go to World War III, brother.
No, I don't. But I'm saying if
I agree.
if you have Jill Stein, a shout out to my mom, Jill, love you. If she can sway enough of the Green Party voters, which I don't know if that's actually realistic.
You saw that report?
Yeah, but I mean, that's what they're saying. I mean, even AOC, my favorite big booty Latina, was calling her out because,
Jill Stein outright said, I will stop Kamala from winning.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't care about Trump. I'm stopping Kamala.
Yeah.
I
think there's a generation of American voters who aren't as aware of the history, like didn't see the relationship with Israel become what it is today. And so they do look at it as like, if you're progressive, like, why are we involved in this thing that is classified as genocide? And maybe if you're conservative, like, why are we sending so much money abroad when we have problems here? That sort of historic tie to this issue and the relationship that America has with Israel, there's not the same kind of reverence that maybe some of the older people that in Congress have currently.
I think Clint Russell made a really great point last week when he said, if you as a nation can't exist without America's support in perpetuity, then you should not exist. And so
3,000%, yeah.
But it's true. Like Israel needs.
So if you don't have America's support, you shouldn't exist.
No. He's saying if Israel
couldn't survive without
if
America.
Israel can't survive without America's support in perpetuity. So his point was basically, we're gonna give Israel as much funding for a short amount of time to make sure that they get to the point where they're sustainable and don't get wiped off the map. But if the idea is we have to fund them forever, that's insane.
Agreed.
And I agree too. There are challenges in this whole issue between Ukraine and Israel. I'm not a fan of any funding for Ukraine.
Yeah, we've given a lot more money to the Ukraine than Israel.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in 50, 60 years of funding Israel, we've given Ukraine more in 3. Absolutely insanity. Yeah. So I tell everybody, like, by all means, criticize Israel, everything, whatever you want to do. And then let's look at how much we're spending on Ukraine. That's got to stop. I can understand why there is a begrudging support for Israel for a lot of people, even libertarians who are like, we don't want to fund it, but we're going to slowly try and figure that out. Because if we were to stop providing Israel with military support immediately, they're going to get flattened. And it could expand to escalation of chaos. That's my concern. And Ben Shapiro made this point, I think it's disturbing to consider, but I think it should be considered. If Hezbollah and Iran mount a massive attack on Israel, and Israel says, we have no support, so we're going Samson option, launch a nuke, it's going to engulf everybody. It's going to spread like wildfire. And that is a disgusting reality, but it's true. And that says to me, our best interests are resolution of the conflict, and then we're going to start winding down our involvement and support for you because of these reasons. So we wish you the best of luck. We want to make sure you're able to sustain yourself, and then we're out of here.
Does Israel have nukes? I don't know this.
The rumors are that they have at least one.
Okay.
And there's something called the Samson option, which is if Israel feels that it's about to be wiped out, an existential threat, they will launch a nuke at whoever need be. If that were to happen, the escalation is obvious. Yeah. The region is going to ignite. It's going to spread into other regions. It's going to be a major disaster. And hopefully it stays regional. I don't think it's a good enough reason for perpetual support for a country. It's at least an argument for why whatever withdrawal we have has to be tempered and reasoned. Otherwise, we get Afghanistan 2.0 with nukes dropping. That's hard reality, man. I know a lot of people are like, no, cut them off now. And I'm like, Afghanistan was bad enough, right?
Yeah, we don't need another 20 years of that mess.
We don't need Joe Biden's abandoning Air Force bases, letting extremist psycho groups come in and take our weapons and have billions of dollars in weapons. So it's a rock and a hard place. I think the U.S. has made generational mistakes with their Middle Eastern strategy, one of which is entrenching us in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Israel.
Did they think we were too strong? They thought that we could just go in there and do what we wanted? I feel like that's what they thought. USA, we can go in there, get those fake weapons of mass destruction, and then to take over and turn them into a democracy somehow, because even though they were never one to begin with, like we could change the world.
Yes, because like South Korea. I think the neocons were looking at South Korea and they said, look at this. We've occupied them for 50 years. And they don't say occupy. They say we have allied with the South Koreans. And look at their culture. Plastic surgery, K-pop.
Yeah.
Seriously. They're
changing faces real quick. They change his whole full faces nowadays.
It is common for South Koreans to get plastic surgery to look more like Americans. And the idea was we can keep a military presence there forever. And after a couple generations, we've turned them into something similar to us. I take a look at what's going on with all of this Middle Eastern stuff, and this is what the U.S. has been trying to do. And it's largely why you point out in Israel, they're really cool and they're like Americans and we get along because America has been funding and supplying and supporting and helping them out to create that culture. I think they look at Afghanistan much like Israel as well. How long have we been in Israel? 50, 60 years or something. And people talk about, oh, they're a secular democracy, or not secular, but they're like a liberal democracy in the region, and we need their support. And the U.S. wants to do that to every other country in the area. Gotcha. Spreading democracy, they call it.
Thanks for watching this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to check out the live show Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. on this channel. Subscribe, and we'll see you all there.